Hello and welcome to the PvE-Gamer. Today we're going to do a little deck tech and we are looking at a Liothan Nupten support deck for co-op games. So if you want to give your friends or someone you introduce to Skytear Horde a good experience, co-op is the way to go. You try to support the people, you make them feel good as they play big creatures and bash in the heads of the assaulting horde. And with this Liothan Nupten support deck, we're trying to do exactly that. We're going to make our partner feel good, they feel strong, and they get accustomed to the game. If they have small play errors, we can help them to mitigate those problems with armor or instants that we can play during the treachery phase. And let's take a look. This deck is also available on skytearhordedb.com. It's a great resource for building your own custom decks and storing them for later time. Great website. I'll put the link in the show notes so you can check out the deck yourself. So first of all, we are playing only 2 colors. We would have the option for 3 colors, but we chose to only play Nupten and Liothan. This is due to the fact that with a beginner deck, you want to still have a choice for your partner. So your partner can either choose the Taulot green pre-constructed deck for a higher challenge in card synergies, or just pick up Kurumo in red and play Rush. And these decks are untouched, so any beginner can just pick up and play a deck of their choice, and you're just using Liothan and Nupten cards. And you also stick to deck restrictions with the deck, because you wouldn't be allowed to play the same cards over a certain amount in the same game. So you're not allowed to play, for example, 3 Restless Phalanx over both of your decks, because there's a limit in total of how many cards of those you can have. For the purpose of support, we are choosing Akhuti's castle. Akhuti is also in the board game a very strong healer, very strong character from the faction of Nupten. The castle has 20 health and the ability to exhaust and pay 1 mana to choose 1, draw a card or rebuild 2. Effectively, we are not going to use this castle often, but we have to choose a castle for deck building purposes. So most probably you will then take the castle of the Taulot character or the castle of the Kurumo character, just to give the other person you're playing with a good experience and having their favorite castle, while you just need the Cloud Gate for deck building purposes. If you choose to use the Cloud Gate, you obviously have Rebuild 2, which might come in handy for longer games when your pillage pile racks up. So if you feel the need to have that, you can of course choose the Cloud Gate. Let's take a look at the allies. Of course, we have Akhuti herself, a heroic ally, phalanx type, faction Nupten. She costs 3 and immediately can exhaust to add 1 mana. So effectively, if you have the 3 mana available, there's an effective cost for 2. That's very nice. And all allies gain +1 armor for the remainder of the turn. So why is she especially good in a support deck? With the new ruling that anyone can gain mana from any source, you can use her to give mana to your pal, to your friend playing with you, and give them more options, the chance to play bigger units and affect the game more. We've got Restless Phalanx. I chose this because it costs 2 and has an attack for 3, so you can make very efficient trades by at the same time rebuilding 1, so putting 1 card from your pillage pile back under the deck. And for the cost of 2, this is really okay. It can trade with many Horde characters, and the chance of getting 1 damage during the treachery phase isn't that big of a deal, so most of the time it is a very effective unit for 2 mana. The Storm Phalanx is actually not that effective from a cost to health and attack ratio. We have to pay 3 and get 1 health and 2 attack, but we can rebuild 2, which in itself is rather nice. But the very interesting thing is it has exhaust, and a monster engaged with Storm Phalanx gets -1, weakens or loses 1 attack. And the interesting thing is you have to remember you can switch the positions in the lane as often as you want. So Storm Phalanx can engage a monster, then exhaust, and then switch the lane again and go somewhere else. And if you can stack this up a bit against strong monsters, this comes in handy. This isn't a play that you will have to make too often because it takes some time. You can only put 1 counter per round on the opponent's monster. But then again, over time it can rank up and be quite handy. The Mentalist Disciple is our tutor. It costs 3, it has a health of 2 and attack of 2, and you can search your deck for a Mentalist card. So this is obviously for searching for our great combo pieces, for increasing our mana base, for getting more armor on the castle, and then in the end for dealing a big chunk of damage with the Circle of Mentalists. Spoiler alert, you will not be able to pull this off in too many games. Your focus is on support. So the whole Circle of Mentalist idea is very interesting and obviously funny if you can deal that much damage in a single turn. But again, this deck is primarily more about support. So if your friend can hold their own with their cards, you can try to build this Circle of Mentalists combo. But if not, you just try to tutor some interesting effects. Clan of the Elk, it's a mana generator. We had an own video on Liothan mana ramp already, and mana ramp didn't get any worse. So we have Clan of the Elk, we have Shamans. So the only drawback with having 2 Clan of the Elk and 3 Shamans is that you clog up the lanes a bit. So if you have 3 mana producers, for example, Akhuti, Shamans, and Clan of the Elk, you're starting to clog up the lanes a bit. But then again, if you feel the need, you can most of the time just trade for minions or for smaller monsters which are available. And most of the time you will make good use of the mana, especially in a 2-player game. You get less mana per person, so you can really ramp up those plays where you need 5 mana for an interesting hero. Shydros. Shydros, we play him because all heroes are pretty strong in this game, and we have the possibility, it is legendary and we had a free slot. And for a cost of 6, we get 7 health, 3 attack, and a lot of armor. So Shydros can very well block these pesky monsters that have like the 1/6 creature with armor 1 that deals 3 damage to your castle if it isn't opposed. So Shydros does what he does best. He stands in the lane, he's a shield, and he blocks incoming damage and drags the game along as you're trying to establish board position to win the game. With spells, we have almost only card drawers, cantrips, and enhancers. So cantrip means you play a spell for a preferably low cost and immediately draw a card. So we get through our deck a bit quicker, and that is very nice as a support player. We have got Bearing the Way here, but we need to zoom out a bit to be able to read it. Bearing the Way, so up to 2 allies gain +1 armor for the remainder of the turn. This isn't that great for the effect usually, but from time to time you are able to sneak in +1 armor to let 1 or even 2 allies live, and if you even can manage to draw a card in this process, this is usually a very good thing. But don't overestimate the effect, it's nice to have. But usually Shadow of Death will be a bit more effective. The drawback is you can't play it in the Treachery phase. It's not an instant you can play then. So you have to play it your turn, but then again, -2 attack for the remainder of the turn and drawing a card for cost 1 is hopefully at least 1 for 2 trade, because you remove the attack from the monster, your ally lives, the monster dies, you draw a card from the monster, and you draw a card from the Shadow of Death. So 2 cards for 1 mana, ideally, and the cost of a card, of course. Psychic Shield is a similar approach. An ally gains +2 armor for the remainder of the turn. Also, we can rebuild, so if the minions pillage us and we have something like the Mentalists or Circle of Mentalists down in the pillage pile, we can put it back into our deck to tutor for it later. So a nice rebuild effect, and +2 armor. We don't draw a card, unfortunately, but the rebuild also comes in handy most often. Overflow, it's just here for drawing cards. Drawing 4 cards, then shuffling your deck, then discarding 2 cards from your hand, or discarding 1 ally is really strong. So sometimes you have spells you don't need at the moment, you would discard, or you discard just 1 ally, and then it becomes a draw 3 cards for 2. That's really, really nice and effective. I like Overflow a lot. Discovering the Depths, we play this for more card draw, but I'm only playing one because I had reached the deck limit when building this deck, and really you have enough card draw as it is, and also with the cantrips you usually do not need even more card draw at the moment. Also 2 for 2 isn't as effective. Mind Control, now this is really fun. It costs a whopping 6 mana, but it can turn the tables pretty nicely. The drawback is you can only get a non-epic monster, but if there is a fitting monster that has some strength or defense to it, you effectively defeat one monster because it is mind controlled and it is our friend now, and you can trade it with another monster on the board ideally. So this would be 2 cards for 1 mind control. Very nice. It has some ruling edge cases. For example, what happens when I mind control a monster and later I return the card to its owner's hand? This would return it to the Horde's hand, which doesn't really exist because it is an automated deck. But this is really an edge case and not really an issue when playing. Speak with the Spirits, a very strong card. It is an instant, so you can wait for the treachery phase for the ability to be revealed and then either give an ally 2 attack, 2 health, or even remove 4 wounds from the castle, and you can choose 2, not only 1. This is a great card. Stream of Life removes up to 3 wounds from an ally. For the remainder of the turn, reduce all damage taken and dealt by that ally to 0. Removing wounds from an ally is usually rather nice. If you have to stall something up, you can use it to reduce the damage to 0 and stall a lane where you're not quite ready to deal with it. And if you don't really need it, you can always discard it to overflow. So Stream of Life, not too bad. Bloodlust, now this is a very strong card again. We get +2 attack and +1 armor for the remainder of the turn. This often makes the difference, as giving plus attack comes rather handy in most scenarios. And it is also available for 1 cost, and it can be played as an instant. So you see a lot of actions that you can play during the treachery phase. So if your co-op partner, mind you, this is a support deck for supporting beginners or people who start with the game. So if your partner did make a bad choice, you don't want to NPC the other people, so you don't want to take their hand and play for them. You want them to make their own choices and experiences. And if they made a bad choice due to lack of experience with the game that you might have, you can play a lot of instants at the treachery phase to save their characters and mitigate those play errors that come from the start. And so they make their own decisions, have fun, learn the game, and get better. Skytear Mine, very straightforward. Play, add 2 mana, remove 2 wounds from an ally or from the castle. So this not only adds 2 mana, mind, we can give the mana to someone else, so we can pay 1 of our own mana to increase the mana pool of the other player by 2, which is very nice. And then we can also remove up to 2 wounds from an ally or from the castle. So we have a lot of flexibility for just the cost of 1 mana. And it even increases our mana base. It costs us 1 card, but we have so much card draw in here and card advantage generators, so that the cost of the card is really a non-issue usually. And as said, the plan B, the Circle of Mentalists. I played this deck, this support deck, over the weekend when I introduced a friend to the game. I played this deck a lot, and I was not able to pull a Circle of Mentalists combo off once because I focused so much on support, but it is there, so if you play with someone who is more confident with his or her own deck, their own deck, you can try to pull this combo off with your mana ramp. That's it for today, our Liothan Nupten support co-op deck with the Cloudgate and Akhuti. Hope you have a lot of fun with it when you introduce new people to Skytear Hordes.